Today we're going to learn about permutations and combinations and learn the difference. A permutation is basically the number of ways objects can be arranged or selected. And so since they can be arranged, the order does make a difference. So if you switch the order around, like um, Bob being president and Jane being vice president, that's a different situation than Jane being president and Bob being vice president. So if you switch the order and it gives you a different situation, that's referred to as a permutation. Now, if you switch the order and it does not make a difference, meaning order is not important, then it would be a combination. And so when you are thinking about a combination, if you were just choosing two students, Bob and then Jane, to be on a committee, or Jane then Bob, it's really the same group. The order doesn't make a difference. Then it's a combination. Now, when you're looking at a combination, your formula is this right here. When you're looking at a permutation, your formula is this, like right there. Now, you might be wondering, what the heck is this exclamation point? Well, if I gave you 4 exclamation point, which is really 4 factorial, that is 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So basically, you start with that number and you keep multiplying by all the numbers below it until you get down to 1. So if you did multiply this out, you would get 24. Where like a 5 factorial would be a 5 times a 4 times a 3 times a 2 times a 1. That's what that exclamation point's about. Now, there is one other small detail that we need to be concerned about, and that's permutations with repetitions. So if you have some letters in a word being repeated, that's where this comes into play. If you're looking at how many different ways you could rearrange words that have repeated letters in them. So let's go ahead and try a couple problems. So here we have permutations. So that means if you switch the order around, it does make a difference. So your A could be paired with B, or your A could be paired with C. But because it's a permutation and if we switch the order, it does make a difference. So if you have B, could be paired with A. Now, these two right here, if you're dealing with combinations, would be considered the same thing. But because it's a permutation, the order does make a difference. Or B could be paired with C. And then we can come back and we can say, well, C could be paired with each one. C with A or C with B. Once again, if you were dealing with combinations, these two would be counted the same because the order does not make a difference. But because we're dealing with permutations, order does make a difference. And so there's no other options we have here for listing these where the order can be different. So this is our answer. Now, some of you may have a permutation button on your calculator, but we could go ahead and use your formula. So you got to take this first number, that 7 factorial goes there, and then 7 goes here. The second number, which is always smaller, goes right here. So if we do work this out by hand, it'd be 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Well, 7 minus 4 in the bottom is 3 factorial. So that's 3 times 2 times 1. Well, oh, that's a 1. So 2 over 2 cancels, 3 over 3 cancels, and 1 over 1 cancels. So you're really left with just this, and you can just type that into your calculator. You type that in, you get, um, sorry, wrong number. We try that again. You type that in, you get 840. So that's how to work out your permutation formula. But if you have a button for this on your calculator, you could just use that also. So let's go ahead and look at how we can rearrange the words here, or the letters here, to come up with different arrangements. Arrangements means the order in which you place your words. If you switch the order, it does make a difference. So that means putting the H before the P would be a different arrangement or word here. Now you'll notice in the first one, we don't have any repeated letters. So all we have to do is just put down, I'm going to put down a blank spot for all the letters. And how many choices do we have for our first letter? Well, we have 7 letters, but one letter's been used. How many choices are left for the next one? That's a 5 or a 6. How many choices are left for the next one? That's a 5. And then you just go down like this. And all you have to do is just multiply these together. Now, technically, this is a 7 factorial, and you get this. Now, whether you think of it as 7 factorial or just multiply them together, it doesn't make a difference. Now, that doesn't exactly work for the next one because you'll notice an E shows up here. If I switch the order in the E's, switch the 2 E's around, it doesn't change the word. So this is where you have to use the repeated elements formula. That says you take a look at the number of options you have, which we have a total of 8 letters. So you're going to go 8 factorial, and then you're going to divide it by the letters that repeat and how many times they repeat. And E repeats, so I'm going to put that down here, and it repeats twice, so that's be a 2 factorial. If you wanted, you could work this out. You work out the top, work out the bottom, and then you get 20,160. Down below, we're dealing with combinations. Now remember, combinations, if you switch the order, it doesn't make a difference. So the 4 could go with the 5, or the 4 could go with the 6. Now, I'm not going to put down 5 followed by 4 because that's going to be the same because it says the order doesn't make a difference. If you switch the order, it's still the exact same thing. So the only other option I have is just pairing my 5 with my 6. But once again, if you switch the order, it doesn't make it a different situation. So that's what combinations are about. Looking at the next one, we could go ahead and use our formula here. We still have a lot of that same stuff from permutations, but it has one additional thing on the bottom. So this first number goes here and here. The second number goes here and goes here. So you could, if you did have a button on your calculator, you could just type it in like this. But if you work it out, 15 times 14 times 13, yes, that's a lot to write. But it still allows you to be able to get to the answer. So the second part, 10 factorial, now this first part, 15 minus 10, would be 5 factorial. Now you will notice you have 10 over 10, you have 9 over 9. So really all these here cancel. Now when you're looking at what's before this, you could also simplify this because 4 times 3, you know, is 12. That's going to cancel out this. You have a 2, you could cancel out that and leave that with a 7. You have a 5, you could cancel out that, leaving you with a 3. And then you can just multiply that 7 times 3 times the 13 times the 11, multiply that out, and you would get this. Or if you happen to have a combination button on your calculator, you could just type that in. So when we're looking at number 33, is this a permutation or a combination situation? So in other words, you got to decide, if I switch the order in selecting them, does that give it a different situation? Now, down below here, if you select George to be the captain and Christina to be co-captain, that's a different situation than if Christina's captain and George is co-captain. So that means it's a permutation. Now, we are doing 2 situations. We have captain, we have 9 options, but now once one person's been selected for your captain, there's only 8 left. And so if you multiply, you get this. So pretty much when you're dealing with permutation, your fundamental counting principle, you could just use it that way. Now, looking at 35, we're looking for 4 students out of 13 to ride in a car instead of a van. Well, the order in which you select them to get into the car doesn't make a difference, so this is a combination situation. So it's your big number combination 4, and you can either set it up in your formula, or I'm pretty sure you probably have a combination button on your calculator. So if you did the formula, it would be this, or if you use your combination button on your calculator, you would just get your answer.